you stand with the Ted Cruzes and the Marco Rubios of the world? No! Do you stand with the freedom fighters of the world? Yeah! Then that's why we say, let Cuba live! Let Cuba live! Let Cuba live!
Mira que ya viene la revolución, para que se asustan será pa' mejor. Es el pueblo entero el que ya está gritando, ¡viva la revolución!
Hey, what's up? So I'm on my way to a Cuba Solidarity rally here in LA, in Los Angeles. Just woke up, it's Monday, November 15th, and we're gonna go and head out to Pershing Square, which is the place where a lot of protests take place here in LA, to express our solidarity with the people of Cuba. Today, November 15th, the US imperialists, the Western-backed opposition in Cuba, is launching a new offensive to protest against the Cuban government. And all across the US and Cuba, the right-wing gusanos are planning an offensive to try to overthrow the socialist government of Cuba, the revolutionary government. And so today, in cities across the US and in Cuba itself, all peoples are joining in solidarity with the Cuban people, the Cuban Revolution, to protest this Washington-orchestrated coup attempt against the Communist Party of Cuba and the Cuban people itself. So we're gonna go out to this demonstration out here in LA. It's important for all peoples of all backgrounds to stand in solidarity with the revolutionary government of Cuba. We have to keep in mind that throughout history, Cuba has been there for all working class and oppressed peoples. During the 1960s, the Cuban revolutionary government was in solidarity with Vietnam and with Korea and with the peoples of Africa resisting colonialism into the 70s. As well as in Latin America and the Caribbean, the Cuban Revolution supported the FMLN guerrilla movement in El Salvador, the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, the Guatemalan communists in the 60s, and guerrilla movements across South America as well. They also collaborated with the Soviet Union on building and constructing socialism, lifting millions of people out of poverty, establishing free healthcare, education, and dignity for all Cuban people on their island. So the Cuban Revolution has been of tremendous benefit, not just for the Cuban people, but for people around the world. And today it's our turn to show our love and our solidarity with our Cuban sisters and brothers who are facing the onslaught of a new imperialist aggression, a new hybrid campaign using media, using SOS Cuba hashtags, using color revolutions, the National Endowment for Democracy, the USAID, and this time even trying to appropriate people of color for their imperialist endeavors. So today we're gonna go out to this demonstration and rally in support of the Cuban Revolution. Viva Cuba Socialista, patria o muerte, venceremos, leales siempre, traidores nunca, venceremos.
People want justice in this country. We want an end to police terror in this country. We want free and quality health care and education for all people in this country. We want to end hunger and homelessness in this country. We must show the world that this country's poor and working class people stand with Cuba and not with the CEOs and bankers who want to overthrow the Cuban government.
That's right.
Hands off Cuba! Hands off Cuba! Hands off Cuba!
Hands off Cuba!
Hands off Cuba!
Hands off Cuba!
Hands off Cuba!
Hands off Cuba!
Hands off Cuba!
Hands off Cuba!
Hands off Cuba!
Hands off Cuba!
Hands off Cuba!
Hands off Cuba!
Hands off Cuba!
Hands off Cuba!
Well, thank you all so much. As we continue this press conference, I'd like to introduce Christian Alcaraz, who is an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Please welcome Christian. Cuba sí!
Bloqueo no!
Cuba sí!
Bloqueo no!
Cuba sí!
Bloqueo no!
Cuba sí!
Bloqueo no!
How's it going, y'all? My name is Christian. I'm an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and we stand in full solidarity with the Cuban people and the Cuban government. With this country, what this establishment, mainstream media won't tell you is that the Cuban people are the Cuban government and the Cuban government are the Cuban people. The Cuban people are active participants in this socialist project. Neighborhood by neighborhood, block by block, local leaders run the country. It is the self-determination of Cuba that we must respect and uphold here in the largest empire in world history. Every year at the United Nations, only the US and a few other countries are the only ones that vote to keep the blockade against Cuba. If socialism is doomed to fail, why are billions spent to undermine it every single day?
Right.
Why can't the Cuban people have a single day of peace? If this country that is blockaded for half a century, if they supposedly are exploiting the people and hoarding the wealth, how is it that every single Cuban person has health care? How are there zero homeless people in Cuba? In contrast to the United States, the richest country in the world, you see mass unemployment, millions killed every year by preventable diseases. It's a facade. The Cuban people took on a road, and they took on the road of socialism, and they dared to struggle against imperialism. And I dare you to look into how they structure their society. I dare you to read the Cuban Constitution. You will immediately see it was created by workers, for workers. And that is why Cuba is the beacon for democracy all over the world. Only in the United States is it not recognized. You can go to any continent in the world, and you'll see that the people stand with Cuba. Cuba has shown solidarity to every continent on the planet, whether to help with COVID, with natural disasters, you name it. Cuba is there. During Hurricane Katrina, they offered help, but we denied it. We dare you to struggle alongside the Cuban people and fight for them by fighting this imperialist system here at home. Our enemies are not overseas, they're here on Wall Street.
Now, to speak to what Christian said, that Cuba is the actual beacon of democracy while the United States is anti-democracy in every corner of the planet, there's no better example than that while the US government was holding up apartheid in South Africa, while they were targeting Nelson Mandela, when they were giving funds to that racist apartheid South African government, Cuba sent volunteers to support the South African freedom fighters. So how is that? How is it that the United States is apparently the democratic country, the anti-racist country, when it's actually Cuba that is showing that solidarity to the world? So if you stand against apartheid, if you stand against imperialism, if you stand against white supremacy and racism, then you stand with the Cuban people in their fight.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
So before we leave, I just want to read off a few very important things that people walk away knowing. I just want to say that there has been so many lies against the Cuban people and the Cuban government since 1959. So many lies that it's hard to see the truth, and that the lies start to sound like the truth to people. So did you know that before the Cuban Revolution, before that socialist revolution, only 60% of people were literate? Today, 99.9% of people are literate in Cuba.
Yeah, right.
Cuba ranks #1 on the Sustainable Development Index in the world, and that's according to the University of London. Okay? We didn't make that statistic up. Cuban medicine has developed an Alzheimer drug and lung cancer vaccine, even with the terrible sanctions that the United States has put on them, to starve them, to make them hungry. Hundreds of millions of Cuban COVID-19 vaccine doses have been sent globally. And they have a 0% homelessness population in Cuba. Now think about how big of an accomplishment that is when the richest country in the world can't solve its homelessness crisis. That's because the workers built the Cuban government, and the CEOs, the bankers, and the slave owners built the United States government. So, in conclusion, let's talk about how the U.S. has targeted Cuba. $1 trillion have been lost in the Cuban economy because of the embargo, the sanctions, the blockade on Cuba. 73 people have been killed by CIA-funded terrorists. They shot down a Cuban flight 455. 73 people killed when the CIA blew up a Cuban airliner. They funded and trained counter-revolutionaries in 1961 to invade Cuba at the Bay of Pigs. There were over 600 attempts to assassinate Fidel Castro, the leader of Cuba, by the CIA. For 29 years, over 180 countries have voted to end the sanctions on Cuba, which are still in place. And if you want to know who's supporting the counter-revolutionary protests in Cuba, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, and other very terrible people like that are behind it. So do you stand with the Ted Cruzes and the Marco Rubios of the world? No! Do you stand with the freedom fighters of the world?
Yeah!
Then that's why we say, let Cuba live! Let Cuba live! Let Cuba live!
Let Cuba live!
Let Cuba live!
Let Cuba live!
Let Cuba live!
Let Cuba live!
What do we want? End the blockade! When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
End the blockade!
And when do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
End the blockade!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
End the blockade!
And when do we want it?
Now!
If we don't get it,
Shut it down!
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 hands off Cuba!
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 Hi, I'm Amanda. I'm from the Coachella Valley, and I'm here to build solidarity with Cuba. I think being an anti-imperialist is showing solidarity to countries that want to pursue socialism, and the U.S. is constantly trying to undermine those revolutions. Cuba has been very successful in the revolution. They've given back their people everything: education, healthcare, affordable housing. And for the U.S. to feel threatened by Cuba, a small island, it's just insane, because they try to do everything just to take that country down. And so building solidarity for that is just very important with being an anti-imperialist and constantly being in the struggle. And imperialist media is all backed up by right-wing media. They're all supported by bourgeoisie's media. The U.S. stands with CNN and Fox News and Washington Post and LA Times, and it's just right-wing propaganda. So when we're out here showing solidarity for Cuba, we're actually trying to refute those articles against Cuba, and it's just so important because Cuba has achieved many things, and the U.S. is always trying to use CIA tactics to bring those achievements down in Cuba. For the Cuban people, I'm always sad that they have to go through these genocidal embargoes, and they have to they have to live with those embargoes, those sanctions, and sanctions kill. But the Cuban people have showed resilience throughout the 60 years, or more than 60 years of the revolution, of when Fidel and Che liberated Cuba. So, us in the Imperial Corps, we always have to show solidarity for our sister and brother comrades in Cuba. So, viva Cuba, viva la revolución socialista en Cuba.
So we just got back from the LA Cuba Solidarity rally at Pershing Square in solidarity with the Cuban Revolution, with the people of Cuba, against empire, against imperialism, against the blockade that makes it impossible for the Cuban people to be able to construct socialism, to continue to survive and build peace and harmony with each other. November 15th, today, the right-wing Cuban opposition is launching an offensive in conjunction, in orchestration by the US imperialist government. And we came out here to stand in solidarity with Cuba, to reject US interference in Cuban affairs, to say no more money for wars, but money for education and jobs and healthcare. No more US interference in Latin America and the Caribbean. Allow our peoples to build socialism, to break free from capitalism and from neoliberalism and imperialism. Even though it was a smaller rally, and by the way, I want to give a shout out to Answer Coalition LA who organized the rally. Even though it was a smaller rally, 15, 20 people tops, nothing huge, it's still important to come out and speak out in defense of Cuba, of all countries under attack by imperialism, no matter how small the amount of people is that show up. Because even if it's 1, 2, or 3 people, being able to speak in a corner, to talk to the masses, to change the minds of even 1 or 2 people, I think that still does a great deal. So I'm glad we were able to speak out in defense of Cuba, to be in solidarity with our Cuban sisters and brothers, to have the internationalist spirit of Fidel Castro, of Ernesto Che Guevara, of Raúl Castro. Overall, it was a success, and I'm glad that there are other demonstrations taking place similar to this one across the country. Viva Cuba Socialista, viva Fidel, viva Raúl, viva el Partido Comunista de Cuba, patria o muerte, abajo con los gusanos, abajo con el imperialismo, abajo con la injerencia gringa. Yankee go home. Peace out, everybody. Thanks for watching and listening.